Here's a bold prediction that might be sure to be wrong. Marketing teams will start hiring 3 specific personas more and more over the next 3 years. Hey there, Logan Lyles, head of partnerships at Teamwork. I'm the host of Marketing Together, and today's going to be a little bit of a change-up episode. It's just me, no guest, solo episode, because there was a post that I shared on LinkedIn a few weeks back that I really think was worth having a discussion about here on the show. You know, we've been talking a lot about on this podcast about the nature of marketing and how that's changing from going it alone to going together, as the name of this show suggests. Well, if the nature of marketing is changing, then wouldn't it make sense that the skill sets needed to be an effective marketer in this new landscape are changing at the same time? Now, again, I could be wrong, but that's my assumption. And based on that logical leap, I guess you could say, there are 3 specific personas that rise to the top of my mind that I believe will be at the top of every marketing team's hiring list. Number 1, journalists. Number 2, former buyers. And number 3, content creators. Now, I've been thinking about this so much that I put out a poll on LinkedIn, which, as I mentioned, was the inspiration for this episode, our first non-interview solo episode here on Marketing Together. Let me know what you think of the format, by the way. But I put out this post a few weeks back on this exact topic. These 3 personas or 3 skill set types that I think marketing teams will be looking for and hiring for as we move into the future. I shared my reasoning and also asked my network to pick which one they thought would be at the top of the list as we move forward in B2B marketing. If you want to hear the results of the poll, I'll definitely share that here in a few minutes. But first, let me share my thinking on why these 3 personas will be hired more frequently on marketing teams and what that means for you as you continue your career as a B2B marketer. All right, number 1, journalists. They already know how to tell stories, and I think even more importantly, they know how to find them. We often overlook that second skill set in B2B. We talk so much about crafting a narrative, telling a compelling story. But as we've talked about on this show, oftentimes you need to find the stories from the people who have sat in your buyer seats, from the people who have reached the promised land that your buyers are trying to get to. So I think journalists are very well suited for that. At the same time, many journalists are going to start to realize they can do very similar work in B2B marketing for a lot better pay. In fact, I can speak to this myself. My own career path went from journalism to B2B sales to B2B marketing. And the reason I just mentioned did play a factor, to be sure. All right, number 2, buyers and former buyers. We're talking here about people who have sat in the buyer's seat each marketing team is trying to reach. I see a lot of marketing leaders reaching into the market lately, into the market that they serve, and bringing those people formally into their marketing efforts by adding them to their teams. Somewhat of an example of this, a few episodes back, we had Brandon Redlinger from Crosscheck on the show, talking about how hiring strategic advisors. He talks in that episode about how you can hire them, how you can work out compensation deals with strategic advisors. So if you want to check that out, we'll link to it in the show description. But suffice it to say, hiring strategic advisors with domain expertise in the roles that you sell into can add a lot of firepower to your marketing efforts. Again, check that one out in the description if you want to go deeper on that front. And number 3, this is something that I've talked about consistently, content creators, especially those who have built audiences successfully in the target market, the marketing team of the brand that they are trying to reach. We did a whole episode dedicated to working with content creators early on this show with Nick Bennett at Airmeet, and I really loved how he broke down 3 specific ways to partner with content creators. In that conversation, we did lay out that one of those would in fact be hiring content creators from your target market to be in-house marketers for your brand. We've already seen a number of examples of this play out already, especially in B2B SaaS. And I strongly believe we're going to see more of this over the next few years. All right, while I think these 3 are going to be more prominent in the hiring and the skill set analysis for B2B marketing teams Going forward, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, yeah, historically, all three of these personas have been valued, at least to some degree, by B2B marketing teams. But what I've noticed is it's often been more from an outside perspective and one-off collaborations like press releases, expert panels, and affiliate campaigns that are just maybe somewhat of a flash in the pan rather than a long-term strategic partnership. All right, which of the three won the vote of my informal LinkedIn poll? I promise we'll get to that in just a few minutes. First, I just want to call out, if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know what you think in the comments section down below. Which one of these personas do you think marketing teams will be hiring more of in the next few years? Journalists, former buyers, or content creators? Also, as you're thinking about this concept, I wanted to share a little bit of the comments that came through on my post on LinkedIn. So let's talk about those for just a few minutes before we get to the final results. There were definitely some strong supporters for the content creators option from content creators themselves that I respect and have seen in my feed for a long time. Morgan J. Ingram and Tim Davidson, to name just a few. Tim said ultimately he'd pick content creators, but he added some really great nuance with his comment. He said the answer probably depends on the person because there are content creators that could be strong journalists and are former buyers, so you get the best of all three. Same could be said about journalists and former buyers. So I think that's a really good point that there could be some mixture of these three because oftentimes the content creators that build a following and build an audience in a specific market do that because they were part of that market. So you see that former buyer and content creator overlapping a good bit. And there were definitely other comments supporting this idea that it will often be a mixture of these three in some form or fashion. Mark Killens at AirMeet, another former guest on this show, said all of the above. Pete Larkin, another marketer that I look up to and have worked with in the past, he offered up journalists make the best content creators, in my opinion. So he's looking at the overlap between journalists and content creators as much as some of the other folks were looking at the former buyer plus content creator persona. And I thought Diana Mitchell's comment was really interesting. I'll read a section of that. She said, all of these have merit. I think that the answer is really that marketing leaders will more carefully build teams that encompass some or all of the above. And journalists / former buyers can also be content creators. So she's definitely seeing some overlap and some melding of these, but I would say it seems like she was in agreement with me that these three really do encompass a lot of the skill sets, the experience, and the things that marketing teams need if they are going to market together, not just go it alone. Now, I'm going to have to stop here and say there wasn't unanimous support for my bold prediction, my assumption, as you'd expect. So let's take a look at another hot take. This one's from an experienced marketing exec, Bennett Bayer. Bennett, if I'm mispronouncing your last name, please forgive me. I'm going with my best shot here. I thought the first part of his comment was an interesting take. Not actually one that I agree with, but it was interesting, so I wanted to share it here as well. He said, sorry, but the shelf life of content creators and journalists are closing fast. AI bots will do this work nearly as well. He went on to say a little bit more. If you want to check out the full comment here, check out the LinkedIn post that inspired this episode in the show description. I strongly believe that the best content creators and journalists are actually going to adapt and start to leverage AI to be even stronger at their craft of finding compelling stories, crafting narratives and intriguing content, while getting even more efficient as they leverage AI to support their creative efforts. I'd love to hear what you think. If you're listening to the show somewhere other than YouTube and you can't leave a comment on the video here, check out the show notes and click the link to this post, as I mentioned, and you can leave a comment on the post with your thoughts there on LinkedIn. Do you think journalists and content creators will be replaced by AI? I think that is an interesting question that comes out of an already interesting take on where are we going with marketing together. I've kept you waiting long enough. What was the final tally after the 200 plus votes were counted up on LinkedIn? Well, it was a landslide victory, actually, for content creators. That option got nearly 2/3 of the vote at 63%. Journalists were in second, but they actually only beat out former buyers by a single percentage point, as journalists came in at 19% and former buyers came in at 18%. So what does this mean? For me, I wasn't surprised to see content creators come out ahead by a hefty margin on this one, but I did think that journalists would be a closer second. I think that a lot of the comments showed that there's a lot of similarities between journalists, content creators, and former buyers. Former buyers often make the best content creators because of their domain expertise. Journalists can turn into great content creators because they're great at finding stories as well as telling stories, even if they don't possess that domain expertise themselves. So I do think that these three will rise to the top, and I agree with the folks in the comments that said some blending of these skills and the overlap of the experience between these three will really be where marketing teams start to prioritize. Shoot me a DM on LinkedIn, or let me know if you think we should go deeper on this topic in future episodes, as well as what do you think about this solo episode format here on Marketing Together every once in a while. All right, as we continue to explore how we go further faster by marketing together, I want to keep exploring the who in this equation, which is why we brought up this LinkedIn post to today's episode. Because if we win by marketing with, not only marketing to, then we need to keep exploring all of the potential who's that fill in that blank. Marketing with former buyers, marketing with content creators, marketing with journalists. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, marketing with advisors, with employees, with integration partners. Really, the list goes on. And I think that the smartest marketers will figure out the right formula for their own approach to marketing together.